Hi there, we're looking at a question from the 2017 Exam 2, and this is from the Matrices module, and this is question 3. So right here we have a transition matrix T showing the way in which senior students are expected to change their choices of electives activity from term to term. The activities we have are communication, investigation, problem solving, and service. And looking at the transition matrix, we read it from this term and to what subjects they change for next term. So let SN be the state matrix for the senior students expected to be an activity in term N. For the matrix, given matrix S1, the rule can be used to predict the number of senior students in electives in terms 2, 3, and 4. So right here we have given our matrix rule, so a matrix recurrence equation, so we can use these values provided. So how many senior students will not change their elective activity from term 1 to 2? So what we are looking at is in this transition matrix here, in the state matrix, is we're looking at these values that they are in the subject and they stay in the subject. So 0.4 for the investigation, we're looking at this value here, 0.4, because they're in I and stay in I. For the problem solving, we're looking at 0.3, and for the service, we're looking at 0.2. So we're looking at an angle across down here. And what we can do is use these values, multiply them by these values to give an answer. So the first one is those in communication. 0.4 will, which is 40%, will stay in communication. And how many were in communication was 300, so we can do it like this. Then plus in investigation, 40%, 0.4, will stay in investigation. So once again, 0.4, and we can times it by the value of 200, plus those that are doing problem solving and staying in problem solving is 30%, so 0.3, times by those doing it, which is 200, and plus those who are staying in service is 20%, so 0.2 times the amount completing the service, which was 300. And if we add these values up, it gives us 320 students. Looking at the assessor's report, right here, question 3A, only 47% of the cohort managed to get that question correct. Moving forward. Next question. So complete the S2 matrix, the state matrix for term 2 below. So with this one, what we need to do is get out our CAS calculator and use the recurrence relationship provided here using our S1 matrix in the formula to calculate the next value. So using these values here, we can place it into our calculator, put in the state matrix, the transition matrix and the state matrix, and we can find out the solution. So if we just go to our next page and we find out how many would be S2, it comes up with the answer here, 250, 250, 300, and 200. So those are the values of those participating in the sports in S2. So let's fill in this information here. So we have 250, we have 250, we have 300, and we have 200. So progression from the S1 matrix to the S2 matrix, we've got a change in values here. So those completing C, I, P, and S. And here's the calculator for having a quick look. If you want to write down those values, just pause the video. Number C, of the senior students, so let's check the assessor's comments for that one. So question 3B here was completed quite well. 73% of the cohort got that question correct. And it actually says here it was answered quite well. Okay, moving onwards. Question C, of the senior students expected to choose the investigation in term 3, what percentage chose service in term 2? So here's our term 2 values. We actually don't have our term 3 values. So we are going to have to make one more calculation to work out what these values are for C, I, P, and S. So we can get our CAS calculator out again. We can place in the values but now using our S2 matrix in here is to calculate the next. So recurrence equation uses the previous value to calculate the next value. And by doing that, we get our values for our S3 of 260, 240, 295, and 205. So let's place them into our values here: 260, 240, 295, and 205. Now, what this question is asking is, of the senior students choosing investigation in term 3. So let's change our color. So choosing investigation in term 3, what percentage chose service in term 2? So service in term 2. So what we are looking at is those that are changing from service to investigation, and what percentage is this that were in service. So let's go through our calculations. One of the things we need to do is actually look at what percentage change from service to investigation. So we go back to this matrix here. So we're looking at what percentage went from S to I. So what percentage went from S to I is 30% of those in term 2 that were doing service went to investigation. So we need to find out what value that actually is. So we need to find out what 30% of this is. And we can do a simple calculation of 200 times 0.3, because that is 30% as a decimal. And this would calculate to be 60 students would go from S to I. So service to investigation. But this isn't what the question's asking. It's what percentage choose service in term 2. Okay, so what percentage of these chose service in term 2? We know how many students it was, so we just now need to find what 60 of this is as a percentage. So 60 out of 240, this equals 25%. So of these values in here, 25% of these chose service in term 2. Checking assessor's comments. This question was done very poorly. It is only 12% managed to get the full marks. Have a read of the assessor's comments, but this style of question did also appear in a 2016 written exam as well. So it is a common question that they could potentially ask. Now going into the last question. What is the maximum number of senior students expected in investigation at any time during 2018? So this one, if we're looking at investigation, we've got 240 students completing it now. We've got 250 students completing it in term 2, and in term 1 we had 200 students completing it. So we could go into our CAS calculator and we could try and find the steady state for this. So if we just go up here, this first one here, find the steady state, so we're going to put it to a large power to a large number. A steady state for investigation would be approximately 239. So a lot of students would probably just quickly write there 239. However, we're looking for the maximum number of students that did investigation. So we've got 240 here, 240 here, we've got 250 that completed it here, and at the start we had 200 that completed here. So the actual maximum number of students that will complete investigation is 250, because we were 200, 250 and 240, and checking our steady state is 239. So 239 is not greater than 250. So let's have a look at the assessor's comments for that one. And down here, question 3D, 250 was the correct answer. 43% managed to get this correct. Most common incorrect response was 239. Those just wrote the steady state answer. Hopefully this has given you some hints of how to complete this style of question, working with percentages and working in transition matrices.